Nowadays, especially with social media, glutes are a big deal, big hype with most of your ladies. So I do have some exercises in here that will help with giving good shape to your butt as well. So I'm going to be working with Workman. She is going to be my assistant today and my model for the demonstration of the exercises and everything. So feel free, if you guys have any questions, you may chime in, but I think most of today we're going to be doing a lot of just the prescription itself and demonstration on how to do the exercises, all right? So without further ado, we're going to start with our first exercise. First, let me say, I want to break it down with the main muscle groups that we're going to be talking about today for your glutes is going to be your gluteus minimus, medius, and maximus. Those are technical terms, okay, but just to let you know, the minimus and medius kind of work in conjunction with one another at the top of your glutes. They help to build the shelf or the upper part of your glutes around the pocket line. So if you can imagine having a butt that's shaped like this versus a butt that's shaped like that. This top part that I just did, that's going to be your minimus and medius, okay? That's going to give you the shelf to your glutes that you're looking for. Of course, maximus is going to be the lower half, giving you last half, the 3/4 down all the way to the bottom of your glutes for the entire glute from top to bottom. I've talked about the medius and minimus for a reason, because if you want to have that nice shape, you've got to also incorporate exercises that will get those guys to contract and build those up, as well as the maximus, because maximus usually does all the work anyway. So that's not the hardest thing to work. It's usually the top one. So we're going to start with that. That being said, because they're smaller muscles. Medius and minimus are teeny muscles in comparison to maximus. They're probably like 1/4 the size. So it's like the maximus does pretty much all the work. So we want to start at the top, work our way to the bottom, so that way you can have a nice, well-rounded butt. For the ladies, for the guys, just more power in general. So, all right. So we're going to start with a basic exercise. It's a reverse hip, or excuse me, let's think here. It's a reverse extension. And the reason I say it's reverse is because an extension is where basically you come up and you're using your back. We're going to be actually doing the reverse of that, bringing your legs up instead. And the reason I want to start with this is because, again, minimus and medius need to work first to me, because they're smaller muscles. I don't want the maximus to take over. And in order to get this thing to work, you actually have to get your hips in a full extension position to get that to drive all the way home. So hip extension is basically here. If I say hip flexion is this way, hip extension is this way. So to get your medius all the way up here and minimus to work, you got to go in full hip extension. So in other words, you got to push your thigh or your femur all the way back and up to get this guy to trigger, right? And so right now I've got a full contraction up here at the top, but I'm forcing that way back. So this first exercise is to give you an idea of how to get your the contraction correct. Also, the minimus and medius help with external rotation of the hip, okay? Bring your leg out this direction, it drives it all the way up. So to work around the glute, because your maximus is here, we want to work out and up at the same time, okay? And that's going to drive it all the way up to the top shelf of your glute, right here where the attachment point is of the medius and minimus, all right?
Disclaimer, this is my first time doing a lot of these workouts, so bear with me, I'm a little rusty.
She's doing great. Okay, so start here.
This. Okay.
You're in a prone position right here, just basically like almost a push-up position, knees down, okay? When you're pushing your legs back, what you want to do is you're going to push your legs back, but you want external rotation again of the femur to drive it home all the way up to the top right here, okay? So she needs to do two things. She needs external rotation, like she's doing, and she wants to bring her legs way up to drive that contraction all the way up to the top right here, okay? Up where the pocket line is, okay? So it's all the way up in external rotation like this, okay? She does not need to go all the way down. As she goes all the way down, more of the glute contraction is going to come from the maximus, okay? So she doesn't have to necessarily go all the way down. I want her to keep it focused and isolated in this one little area, okay? Because we're trying to develop that top part of your butt. So she kicks out, she external rotates the hips all the way up. She gets that full contraction right here in the top shelf of her glute, and she can go back down partially. She doesn't have to go all the way back down, and she's going to do external rotation and all the way up at the same time again. So let's go ahead and go through some repetitions of that. External rotation, she's forcing it up. She wants to make sure that she's keeping everything flat here. Try not to overdo it, because you'll feel it in your lower back here. Try to keep your glutes activated, so she needs to be squeezing her abs at the same time and really isolating, so we can get to this little fine area here to get that to activate, okay? External rotation and full hip extension, so that thigh is coming all the way up in contraction, all the way right up here. You could probably see that. Where are you feeling this right now?
Hard work.
It does. It burns a lot. And the thing is that she was keeping it isolated, so she wasn't actually giving herself a chance to rest. When you drop your thigh all the way down, it will affect the gluteus maximus in the initial point, but you're going to be relaxed. So she was keeping it up high and keeping those guys contracted, okay? So when you're doing this, just make sure, again, you got external rotation of the hip, and you're forcing that thigh all the way up in full hip extension. It's almost, I know it sounds kind of funny, but it's almost like a scorpion tail goes up, and you kind of want to do this at the same time. Try to make sure that you're thinking about it. You know what it feels like to contract your glutes, okay? But if you put your finger up here and you feel that area, you can actually feel it flex when you're doing it just standing up like this. You can put your finger down and feel for it. Get a mental reference point when you do this. So when you lay down and you're doing the contraction, if you don't have a trainer with you, you can feel for that same area. You know where your pocket line is. You have to think about it. You could be doing it partially right, or you could be doing it all the way right. So it's up to you. Think about it. If you feel it down here more, you're not doing it correct. You should feel it at the top. So make just a conscious effort to think about it when you're doing that in particular, okay? And then I think we're going to move on now to step-ups, okay? We're moving right over here. Okay, the step-ups, before we start. Step-ups basically are going to be working more of your gluteus maximus, okay, the lower part of your glutes, okay, they take up the lower part of your hips. They basically help with, the gluteus maximus is one of the main reasons for it, you know, us using is to basically help us to stand up and get our bodies in an upright position. So if you were to be squatting down and you were to stand up, this is going to be mostly your gluteus maximus to help get you up into an upright position and standing position, okay? But that being said, when we do this, in this position right here, you can affect your quads as well if you're doing a step up, okay? So we got a little bit of critiquing we're gonna do to help to make it more of a glute intensive exercise. So she's got her thighs up. Now here's the way it works. If you have a 90-degree angle or less on your quads, okay, 90 degrees or less, your quads are in a more stretched and elongated position, so they're gonna have to work harder to get shorter, okay? So they're gonna work very hard. So we wanna keep our quads no less than 90 degrees, even more open if you can, okay? So what you have to do to reinforce this, is going to push through the heels. You push through the heels to make sure that your activation is going to be going to the glutes, okay? And I need her to slightly lean forward, because what you want here is, actually, do me a favor, switch sides. Okay, so we want a 90-degree angle or open more than this, and this is fine. But what I want is more of the hip angle to be, I want her hip angle to be decreased. So she needs to lean forward slightly to decrease this angle more, so that way her glutes are more in a stretched position. Less here, more here. So we're talking about less angle reduction here, more angle reduction right here. And when she does that, if she rounds out her back, it's going to hurt her lower back. So she has to keep her back upright as she's leaning forward, okay? Just like that. Okay, pushing through the heels. Now, if she does this, she wants to keep it all in the glutes, excuse me. Again, if she pushes through and she feels her quads, she's doing it wrong. Okay, you're going to feel a little bit of quads, but I want it to be more glute intensive. So as she stands up, she needs to be very controlled about it. And when she gets to the top, she doesn't lock out her legs and lose the contraction. She needs to keep the weight applied to the heels, slightly forward. And as she's descending, coming back down, she needs to make sure that's very controlled and trying to hit the same mark she did when she left. Okay, so go through the repetition. That's okay. That's okay. Lean slightly forward, good, and up and slow, control, and then watch the knee being locked. Right there, slightly bent knee, make sure to stay on the heel, and keep that tension on the glutes. Go ahead. Squeezing the glutes, the lower part of the glutes right here, maximus, okay? Go down, okay? And she's keeping it nice and slow and controlled, keeping the weight on the heels. As you can see, her toes are lifting up, which is good, that's fine. As long as she's balanced, and she's not that's okay. She's not locking out the knees. And she's keeping the contraction in the glute area right there. Now we go down, just go down. Slow it down just a little bit, more controlled. The whole objective here is to keep the contraction in your glutes as much as possible. Again, if you start to feel the quads, it's mind muscle connection. You know what you're looking for. You're looking for as much contraction as you can in the glute area. So try to really think about applying attention here. Am I, locking out my knees? Am I going too fast? Things like that. To try to make sure everything is directed back there. Okay. And good control, just like that. Perfect. Again, keeping that knee angle open and decreasing the hip angle, okay?
Now, Ryan, I got a question for you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Reps and sets. Should someone be doing this with body weight to start? Should they add dumbbells if it's too easy? Is there a proper rep range that you like to prescribe to clients?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. If you're starting off with this your first time, I definitely recommend body weight in general. Here's the thing, and I had told Kone this as well. Anytime you apply weights, depending on what your condition level is. So in other words, if you're, give her an example, if your glutes are actually weaker but you have strong quads, okay, and you start doing this with weight, your quadriceps are going to automatically have to kick in to pick up the difference for the movement you're trying to accomplish. They have to do their job. So that being said, you're going to have to override that. You can't override it by going necessarily heavier with weights. You have to go backwards. So you actually have to start from the ground level up. So you have to start with no weights, and you'd have to actually really think about what you're doing. You'd have to apply those angles and the speed I was telling you about, and make sure that you're keeping everything where it's supposed to be, in the glute area, not in your quads. So, and then of course, if you want your glutes to get stronger and bigger, you can apply more weight, but just make sure that your quads aren't overriding it. That's the only problem. If your quads are stronger, they're going to tend to do that. But if not, if your glutes are stronger, your quads are weaker, it's going to be the opposite effect. Your glutes are going to work very easily. So, but be conscious of that. So yeah, so back up in the weight, use weight when necessary. Otherwise, just back up in the weight to start for a beginner.
Gotcha.
You're like me. No, wait.
No. No. Okay, so let's move to the next exercise here. Let's see here. We were going to do tube walking. Tube walking is another exercise that I do as a trainer. And the whole purpose of this here is you want to try to get your minimus and medius working at the same time along with your maximus, okay? Again, external rotation of the hips. A lot of that comes from your minimus and medius. Your maximus assists with that. But along with the squat, you're working all the different muscles of your glutes, okay? So this is how the tube walking works. She's going to be just basically, you're going to put the bands around the lower half of the knee, okay? So right around the, so your patella's right here.
Under your knee.
It's going to be under your kneecap, okay? She's going to get down in squat position. You're going to want to pull to the side over here. I want to show you from the side angle how we're doing this and why. Okay, so when she gets down into a squat position, here's this. When she gets down in squat position, you want to make sure that your knees aren't coming too far forward because it's not going to really put as much of a stretch in the glutes. You need to make sure the knees are back further, putting that glute in a more stretched position, okay? So as you go down, make sure you're pushing back good. Now she's going to put the weight on the heels like I had said earlier. You want to keep the weight on the heels to keep that contraction in the glutes. She's pushing back far enough. Now, the band is actually going to trigger that medius and minimus as well as the lower half of the maximus. Okay, so now she's got all three muscles working in conjunction with one another now. Okay, so now we're going to incorporate a side step to reinforce the contraction on one side. She's going to go one way and then back to the other. Okay, so let's go 4 steps down, 4 steps back. Okay, so she's keeping the weight there. This is a counterbalance so she doesn't fall. Okay, she's pushing back, good. Pushing out with the legs, dropping her hips low enough. That's perfect form. Excellent. Great form. Perfect. And this is going to count the most. She doesn't, when you get done, you don't stand all the way up, you'll lose the contraction. You're going to come up 3/4 of the way and stop. You see how she's not locking out the knees. She's keeping everything tense. And she's getting low enough, which is great. And pushing through the knees. Now, this, again, this is a, you done?
Huh?
Do you have more?
I'm done.
Oh,
I did 4 there. 4
Oh, perfect. Okay. So
someone's going to call me out and be like,
But anyhow, so yeah, this is a good exercise again to incorporate all three of those muscles. Again, everything comes down to angles. You know, the range that you're going. You don't need a lot of weight with this, honestly. It's a very easy exercise. It's meant to be just kind of controlled for endurance. You know, anytime you use bands, you're going to do that. It's going to also help to strengthen the outside of your legs so that way you can control your femur. But she's getting low enough. She was pushing it out the sides just fine. She was leaning back on her heels, which actually helps to stretch that glute even more, and pushing through the heels and not locking out the knees on the way up. So that was perfect form. Okay, so do you have any questions?
Nope.
Nope, good. Okay, so we're going to move to the next exercise, and I think, what did we say the next exercise we have?
lunges.
Yes, we have lunges. Okay, and that's what the weights are for. Okay, now we're going to move on to your basic exercise lunges, but I'm going to have her do reverse lunges, and the reason being is because that doing front lunges work well, but because of the momentum shifting forward, it actually does apply a lot of tension to your quads because you actually have to slow your body as you step forward. So reverse lunges from experience has always been a go-to for myself and for my clients for the gluteus maximus, because you can control this going backwards and you can apply the tension to the heels and really get your glutes to work and take the tension off the quads, okay? So I'm gonna let her show you guys some reverse lunges here. Okay, before we do this here, make sure she's lined up right, everything looks good. Now, she's gonna go into a lunge. She needs to, when she does this, it has to be a long enough stride, okay? Again, here's what we're looking for. We don't want her knees to close that angle. Anything past 90 degrees closed is too much. But we do want her to close the angle at the hips again, so she's gonna have to lean forward slightly to round off that butt and really stretch it, but not so much at the knees, because if she drops her knees past 90 or more, it's gonna start working the quads because you're stretching those guys, all right? So we wanna keep it in the glutes, okay? So go ahead and make your, there you go, reverse, there you go. So she's in a good spot here. This is slightly open, it's fine, slightly lean forward. Good, and just keep your back strong here and keep your chest up. That's perfect right there. Push to the heels and step up. Good, and keep going, alternating. Now we don't want, on this one, we don't want, again, you don't want to lock out your knees, you'll lose the contraction, all right? You want to keep everything under control with speed. Make sure your stride is long enough. And put the slight lean forward, so that way you're making that hip. You want to put that hip in more of a stretched angle, so you have to put that slight lean forward. Again, if you don't keep your chest up, you're going to feel tension in your lower back, okay? So you want to make sure you keep your chest nice and strong and keep it up the entire time, but yet you're still leaning forward, so you're putting a little bit of a sway back there. But keeping everything tense. Keep going. Excellent. She's taking her time. She's not locking out her knees. She's keeping the weight on her heel, on the eccentric part and the concentric part, basically going backwards and then coming forward and contracting the muscle. Nice balance. That's perfect. And the only thing that would stop anybody here with this exercise, two things. You're either going to feel it in your quads or you're going to feel it in your lower back if you're rounding off. So again, when you're doing this, you lean forward. Make sure that you're leaning forward with your chest up to put a little bit of arch in your back. Your weight's on your heels, right? And so you're decreasing the angle here at the hips. Okay, so that way your glutes are going to work a lot harder. Don't go too far past, we're talking about going 90 or above 90. What would that be, like 120, okay? That's acceptable. Keep the weight on the heels, and if you do that, your maximus will work a lot harder than your quads, all right? You can make it more of a glute intensive type exercise. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of quad action there. So make sure that when you're doing anything that has to do with lunges or step-ups, hyperextensions, anything like that, make sure that you're keeping your knee angle open. Don't go past 90 degrees. So you want to keep it anywhere from 90 to about 120. Always decrease the hip angle, because the more the hip angle is decreased, the more stretch you're putting on the glutes. And again, it's going to come down to weights. Do you need weights or do you not need weights? It depends on your conditioning level. Mind-muscle connection is key here. This is what I do a lot with my clients. Make sure you're thinking about what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, if you're trying to do your lower half of your glutes, feel for it. If you're trying to work your upper half, the medius minimus, feel for it. If you're doing an exercise and you don't feel those muscles activating, you're doing something wrong. You're going to have to correct an angle, the amount of weights you're using, the amount of repetitions you're doing. Something's not right. But if you do everything correctly, then you should be feeling it in the desired location. So really think about what you're doing. Apply mind-muscle connection. Think about angles. Think about weights, and just keep working at it. I mean, if you don't hit it right off the bat, you'll get better as you go. And also, you can watch videos, things like that, like you're watching here, and you can get a lot better with doing it. And I also recommend getting a trainer. If you just don't know how to do any of this stuff at all, definitely recommend a trainer. Trainers are very useful. They've got a lot of knowledge when it comes to this stuff, and they can help you to home in on a specific area you're trying to do, okay?
And Ryan, if anybody lives in Houston, Texas, who could they contact as a trainer?
There's a trainer. It's Ryan Workman.
Yeah, Ryan Workman. This guy right here.
There's a trainer named Ryan Workman in Houston.
This guy right here. This guy.
Yeah. So anyhow, I'm actually at a one-to-one training center by the Galleria. So it's probably about 20 minutes from here, but it's down basically close to downtown Houston, and I'm there pretty much every day, even Sundays. So you guys can give me a holler if you want. You hit me up on social media. Just look for it's Ryan Workman 1 on my Instagram page. Hit me up from there, and then we can actually talk about further, training and stuff if that's what you're interested in doing. So, but yeah, I'm here in Houston. So if you're in Houston, give me a shout.